Morning, everyone. Dr. Gajendra P.S. Raghava has already joined the session. However, he will take means we will take a moment to connect with him. So kindly uh, just wait.
Hi, I'm there.
Good morning, sir. Sir, please check if you are able to present or not.
No, still I cannot present.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
I think yes, I can present now. Yes, I can present now.
Okay, sir. Sir, sorry for this technical glitch at the last moment. Thank you, sir, for being patient with us. And good morning to everyone. And it is my privilege to welcome Professor Raghava to the workshop on bioinformatics,
Excuse me,
resources,
Dr. Ruchi,
tools.
you are muted.
Yeah, I'm getting the voice. I have no problem.
No, it's there. Voice is there.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay. So again, good morning, everyone. It is my privilege to welcome Professor Raghava to our workshop on bioinformatics, resources, tools, and its application. Welcome, sir. Welcome to our workshop. It is our great pleasure to have you on our workshop. And sir, more than 1100 students have registered for the workshop and will be benefited by your address. Professor Raghava is head at Department of Computational Biology, Indraprastha Institute of Information Technology. Before joining IIIT Delhi in 2017, he was working as chief scientist at Bioinformatics Center at MTech Chandigarh. Sir has done his MTech from Indian Institute of Technology in the year 1986 and completed his PhD from IMTech in bioinformatics in 1996. He has worked as postdoctoral fellow at Oxford University, European Bioinformatics Institute, and established bioinformatics infrastructure at UAMS, USA. Also, Sir has worked as visiting professor at Postech, South Korea in the year 2004. Professor Raghava is a strong supporter of open source software and open access. All resources developed by his group are free for scientific use. Sir's group has developed more than 250 servers and 40 databases in the field of computer-aided drug or vaccine design, which is probably the highest number of services developed and maintained from a single group in the world. These services are heavily used by scientific community with nearly 150,000 hits per day. His group has published more than 250 research papers in reputed journals, and most of his papers are highly cited with more than 17,000 citations. In addition, his group has contributed and maintained number of web pages that includes CRDD, OSDD Linux, GPSR packages, GPSR Docker, to name a few. Professor Raghava has been awarded with several prestigious awards like Sun Pharma Research Award in 2018 by Sun Pharma Plant Science Foundation, Scientist Award in 2019 Scientist Award in 2019 by Research Award by Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers of India, and Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award in Biological Sciences in 2008, to name a few. Sir has also been listed in the world most influential scientific minds in the year 2014. Sir, I kindly invite you to deliver your talk.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank organizers and the principals for inviting me to deliver the talk. And this is the best opportunity for me to interact with the students, because why we are working? We are working to serve the public actually. Okay, so I will start my presentation.
Okay, sir.
Is my slide visible? Please confirm that.
Yes, sir.
My slides are okay. Thank you very much. Okay, topic is regarding the application of artificial intelligence in designing vaccine against virus like coronavirus. But in reality, this is more, I will call the application of computers in designing the vaccine against the viruses. It's not only viruses, if we have to understand the technology of the vaccine development. So I will go slowly, no problem. Most important part in today's time is you can learn anything yourself. It's not a big problem at all, because on internet we got all the videos, all the presentations, everything is available. What you need as a student to
Sir?
ask question. Yes.
Sir, sorry for interruption. Sir,
Yes.
Your presentation is not visible. Kindly check that if there is some problem or technical glitch so that we can resolve that.
Okay, okay. I will. Now is it visible?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Now it is visible.
Okay. Okay. Please tell me when there is a problem in the presentation. Okay.
Okay, sir. Sir, as you know, it is heavily raining in Delhi, so there might be some issues. But sir, thank you very much. Now it is visible.
Okay. So it's the most important part in life is to ask the question from yourself. Because let's say I will tell you about myself. I was doing job at Imtech Chandigarh as a head of computer department, IT department basically. And research was not part of my business. I have the questions in my mind related to biology, because everybody is working in biology in our institute at Imtech Chandigarh. I was odd man out at the institute because I was in the computers. So I have a number of questions in my mind, and just to address my questions, I talked to the scientist. At that time, internet was not as good as today. So I talked to the scientist, I learned little biology, and slowly I developed the interest in the biology and started to develop the simple software for biological purpose. So I am not a trained scientist sort of things. Okay, I just have the curiosity in my mind. I want to learn something. And that's why I start to develop the software to help the biologist basically. In this process, I go in the more and more in the depth, and that's what I'm today actually. Anyway, so first question is, we have the different organism, okay, and every organism have their own life, except the human. The living means life of expectancy increased for the human drastically in last 50, 60 years actually. In 1950 in India, the average life of expectancy was 31 years only. And in today's time, it's around 65 to 70. So there is a lot of change, a lot of intervention due to the medicines and all facilities. But another important part is to understand why the different organisms have the different living time. Let's say human goes maximum 100, 120. Okay. I'm talking about maximum actually. But for each animal, there is a different life expectancy. So what is there behind all these different life expectancies? Because all our organisms, they have the genomes. We have to understand the genome. So there is another slide, because this slide I take from my class actually. I teach the course actually. So first fundamental question is, what are the cause of the death actually? There are a number of reasons for the death. It may be accident, it may be environment problem, or it may be age of organism. Basically, each organism have the age. So human also have the age factors. But what I'm going to talk today about disease actually. In disease, there is you can define the disease associated with the pathogens. Means, let's say virus. Nowadays we all know about coronavirus, bacteria, fungus. These are called pathogens. They cause the disease to the human actually. There is another type of disease like disorder or malfunctioning. Like cancer is a good example, or maybe autoimmune disease, where our own system is not working as it's supposed to work. So that is called disorder actually. Okay, malnutrition. When you are not getting the healthy food, proper food, then there is another. Another problem is nowadays the side effect of the drugs. These are some reasons, and possible solution is to design the biomarkers to identify the disease, to give the drugs, okay, to design the vaccines. All these things are important possible solutions. So maybe I believe that most of you are biologists, but if you are not biologists, then I'm giving just a slide which will give you some information. All biological system, they are basically living organisms. They have the organs, organs have the tissue, tissue have the cells. So cell is a basic unit. In if you have read the physics, chemistry, other books, you will find the atom. Atom is the minimal unit. Okay, where we say that atom is the unit of any molecules. Basically. Similarly, for any living organism, cell is the unit, basic unit. Without the cell, you cannot have the living organism. Okay. Now the cell itself has the organelles, macromolecules, molecules, atoms, and major part of the challenge nowadays is to understand this nucleus. In nucleus, we have the genomes, and genome is in the form of the, let's say, in case of the human, they are in the form of the chromosome basically. In case of the human, there is a 23 pair of chromosomes basically, and these chromosomes are made of DNA. So ultimately, your genome is made of DNA. So lot of things. Let's say you look like your parents. Why? Because due to the genome, you have the particular height and different color of eyes and all sort of things. Who decide? Genome decide. So genome is the basically major unit who decide your characteristics basically. Okay. So nowadays it's possible to sequence the genome. So I will give you the example that human genome have the 3 × 10⁹ nucleotides or DNA base pairs. So now you can imagine the size actually. Okay, 3 billion base pair. So it's important for you if you are biologist, because sometimes I ask the question from a lot of biologists. I interview a number of places actually. I ask a simple question: do you know what is the size of the human? Most of the biologists, they don't know. And it looks very odd actually. If you are a biologist, if you don't know that what is the size of the genome actually, because which has been sequenced 20 years back. So it's important to ask the questions. You will get the all answers from the Google or Wikipedia. Lot of sources are there. Why there is a major challenge in the sequencing? Though sequencing is there from 1977, Sanger sequencing and other techniques are there, but they are slow. New techniques, which is called the next generation sequencing. Due to this next generation sequencing technology become a routine job. So let's say, for example, coronavirus, more than 2 million patients have been already sequenced. Patient means their corona strain basically have been, coronavirus strain have been sequenced actually. Why? How it happened? Due to the next generation sequencing. So what is the next generation sequencing? In next generation sequencing, we take the whole DNA actually. We cut into the pieces and make the library actually. And then for each piece, we sequence it separately actually. Once sequence, then we have the different softwares for assembling the genomes, so genome assembling softwares. So here at each step, you need the computation because by hand you cannot assemble the whole genome. That's why today, whether you like it or not like it, as a biologist, you have to learn the computer technique. You cannot avoid it. Because I will tell you the fact, most of the students who hate the maths, they come into the biology. And the people who hate the biology, they come to the math. So they are basically contradicted to each other, or means they are opposite to each other. But in real life, if you want to work, nowadays, interdisciplinary field is important. Even if you are biologist, you don't want to go into the biotech, it's no problem. But you have to learn the basic things so you can utilize the today's technology. Anyway, so these are some examples of the genome gallery. You have that first genome have been sequenced. That's basically phage. Phage is basically nothing. It's a virus which lies the bacteria. That is called phage basically. So it's only 5 kb. 5 kb means only 5,000 basically. 5K we say simply. BP here is a base pair actually. Don't confuse with the this hard disk actually, kilobyte, megabyte. Okay. So here BP is a base pair actually. Okay. So you may say 5 kb in simple word kp. Okay. So first it has been said later on first genome of a free living organism which has the life, because virus we never consider it a living organism basically. So first living organism have been sequenced in 95. There's in French, and it have the size of around 1830 kb. So I will consider in the mega actually, or millions basically, 1.8 billion. So now you can see the difference in the size. Okay. Now in 95, the first smallest genome of any free living organism have been sequenced, and that had the size around 580,000 basically, or 580K. So this is the living organism. Then we have the second one. These are the history actually. I'm just giving you the idea that how sequencing had grown over the time actually. And first genome of human genome had been sequenced, which take nearly 13 years, and a lot of country involved, a lot of money has been expended. Nowadays, sequencing a human genome is a routine actually. So that's where the advancement in the technology is there. And this have lead to the different type of terminology. So this slide I have made just to give you the idea about the different terminology in the field of omics actually. This is called omics basically, where we call genomics, proteomics. So we have to understand any human being is made of have the organs and tissues, and all tissues are made of different type of cells actually. In cell, you have the center, this is called nucleus, and nucleus have the genome. And genomes, I'm talking about the human example, 23 pair of chromosomes are there. Chromosome is nothing, it's a basically compact form of the DNA actually, where DNA is very well packed around the histones basically. And these are modifications are there that is called methylations or other acetylations. This is called epigenomics. This is called epigenomics. Okay, when you sequence the whole genome, so this is I told you 3 to 10 power 9 base pair. Then we call the genomics. These are the important terms you have to learn it. In genomics, there are some regions which code for the proteins, and the mRNAs which code for the protein is called the transcriptomics. And I believe that they will share, organizers will share the recording, so you can read them actually. Okay, that is called transcriptomics. When this mRNA translated into protein, so all set of the proteins, each protein is made of 20 amino acids basically. This is called proteomics. Okay. When there is a glycosylation, that is called glycomics. And if it is non-coding, then we call non-coding RNA. I am not going in the other areas like single cell genomics sort of things. Okay, so we have the metabolomics, where we have the lipid or glycomics works. So that's basically another field, lipidomics and glycomics. So these are the called the omics word. So as a biologist, if you are in the field, you should learn these terms. It's not difficult for you at all. But if you are a computer scientist, then you can get this information from any video actually. Now there is a question actually. I talked to a number of students actually, and sometimes what I find actually, in most of us actually, in our system, we did a lot of studies. We do all books reading and everything, but we don't know about the general things actually. I asked a number of persons actually, what is the size of the virus actually? What is the size of the bacteria? Most of us, we have no idea actually. How many genomes have been sequenced? So we have no idea. So if you go to the, let's say, NCBI, there is a genome browser is there. You go there and it will give you the all genomes. Now you can understand that how many genomes have been sequenced. In case of the eukaryote, nearly 18,000 have been sequenced. In case of prokaryotes, these are the different genomes which have been sequenced over the time basically. So I am not giving the whole list. You can go and then you can browse. There is a filter. You can specifically put for particular organism. You want to see the whole organism, you will get the information. This is the site from where you can get the information about the coronavirus. I told you that already submissions is 23 lakh, more than 2 million basically. Different strains of the corona have been sequenced. So if you are interested more in the coronavirus, about their genome, other information, spread and everything, this site will provide you the information. So you will have the question in your mind that viruses are always harmful to us. This is not the case. They are sometimes useful to the human basically. In fact, lot of bacteria have been, harmful bacteria have been killed by the viruses actually. That is called bacteriophage. Same way to the fungal cells. So a lot of pathogens is killed by the virus itself actually. And this slide actually shows, recently we demonstrate that so that even the oncolytic viruses, they can be used to treat the cancer actually. So nowadays people are using virus to treat the human being actually. So it's not like always it's harmful basically. Okay. So we have created one database actually. If you have the time, you can go here. And if you are working in the cancer and virus, then you will find a lot of research in this area. So we have created a database which maintain all the viruses which have been used to treat the cancer. These are called oncolytic viruses. Okay, one thing we have to understand with the time is changing. If you go a long time back, then there is a empirical studies where there is a certain experiment, they perform certain experiment or certain observations. Based on that discovery through the observations, nature, they observe that this particular plant is useful for this purpose. So that research is based on the observations basically. Then the second phase comes, or this is called paradigm. Second paradigm, basically theoretical research, where they have theoretically decided that this will be the theory behind it actually. Development of generalized principles and formulas of the models actually, that like Newton's law, Maxwell's equations. So they theoretically fit in the different observations or experiments. Then next phase comes where everything come into the computation. Let's say, for example, we want to simulate flights or anything, molecules. We can use the computation. So a lot of things have been done: modeling, simulations, complex natural and engineering processes. Now there is a new era has been starting, that is called data intensive scientific discovery. So here it's the other way around actually. A lot of data is generated due to the theoretical or experimental work. Now question is how to extract useful information from this data. That's called data mining, or in simple we call big data mining. Already in previous talk they have shown that how what is the speed of genome sequencing itself actually shows that a lot of data is coming in every field. See that Twitters or even Facebook, Google, they are producing data in petabytes basically, okay, daily. So, but what you will do with this data? You have to develop the tools, you have to develop the data mining tools, which can extract the useful, important information. So, present model is like that. Earlier it was pure theory, experiment, and technology and principles. Nowadays, this is a mix. So, technology, theory, and experiment, they are working hand to hand actually. Experimental data is used to develop the theories, and the theory is again used to start the new experiments. Then again data is coming. So they are working in the hand to hand basically, in synergy mode. That's the model in today's time actually, if you want to be successful. Now question is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is too big word actually, but it's a simple thing. We are trying to make computer intelligent. Now you will ask me why we need to make the computer intelligent when there are a lot of human beings are there. One advantage the computer has, which human doesn't have, is speed and to work tirelessly. Let's say how much work you can give to a person, human being. So that's the advantage with the computer, but the intelligence is not there in the computer because it's a simple machine. It will do whatever you will ask them to do, and that's what we call the computer programs. Computer programs are nothing. These are the set of instructions which you simply dictate what to do. So challenge is how to write the software which can make your machine intelligent. So it can think like a human being, it can think rationally, and same by behavior also like human. That's a challenge actually. But it is far from perfection. Still we are working. I want to give one statement here. Number of students I have talked to them, they are scared with the computer or mathematics. Please believe me, using the computer, even computer programming, is not a difficult job. Only it's a hesitation which is stopping you to use the computer. Computer use doesn't mean just take the mouse and then you are just clicking, getting something. No, I mean using the computer means developing some program, using some scientific libraries, applying some machine learning techniques, deep learning techniques, sort of things. I'm saying that sort of thing knowledge actually. Please remove your hesitation and jump it. You can do it actually. I'm not saying you don't do your job. You do whatever you are doing actually. But same time, you can learn with the computer side by side actually. And particularly Python is so powerful programming language and so easy language actually. You can easily learn actually in few weeks actually. And you can do any job work. I will give you the example. All of my students who are doing PhD with me or who has completed PhD, most of them, they are biologists and all softwares or web servers developed by them. So you can do it. Never have this idea that I'm biologist, I'm geologist or botanist. I cannot develop the software. I cannot do the bioinformatics. No, you can do it. Only thing hesitation is a challenge. Anyway, so if you talk AI is too wide actually. It's not practically possible to go everywhere. I will focus only on the machine learning. Machine learning is mainly used for the classifications because so classification in simple classification, the data fitting is done by the linear data that is called linear regression or non-linear or logistic regression. These are the different old-time linear data fitting. But if it is non-linear handling, then this standard technique of curve fitting fails actually. Then we use the machine learning techniques to handle the non-linear data or classifications or predictions basically. And major techniques for machine learning techniques are ANN, artificial neural, support vector machine, hidden Markov model, k-nearest model, random forest classifier. Okay, and there is a further extension of ANN. If you go to the multiple layers, then we call deep learning basically. Deep learning means you are basically going in the depth where you need the computation. Earlier, computation had the limitation. That's why deep learning was not popular. But nowadays, computational power become cheap and power. A lot of computational power is available actually. So deep learning will provide with better solutions. So if you see the overall applications of AI or bioinformatics, a lot of applications are there you can use in the computer-aided vaccine development. Today, I will cover that part actually. Computer-aided vaccine development. Then identification of the drug target. If you are working in the drug design, then you can work on identification, protein structure prediction, function annotation. So I'm not going in the detail of all that. Protein-protein interactions or interaction of the biological molecules. That's another area. There are a number of areas, but today my major focus will be on the vaccine development. First of all, before we go further, we have to understand the difference between the drug and vaccine. Let's say when you are ill or you are suffering from a particular disease. So what doctor will give you? That's called drug. That's a small chemical. These are the basically chemicals. Drug is nothing, it's basically chemicals. They will give to you. These chemicals have the property, they will kill the pathogen. Pathogen may be bacteria, maybe virus, or maybe fungus, depending what type of infection you have. And then these chemicals or these drugs will kill the pathogen, and then your disease will be cured or you will be healthy. So that's a concept of drug. So next time you again ill, then again doctor will give the drugs, and then you are. So every time when you are ill, the doctor will give you the drug, and then you will be treated by the drug. So that's basically aid. That what I simply call the aids have been given from the outside to your body to fight against the pathogens. That's called drug. But vaccines are different. How the vaccines are different? Let's say in your childhood, you get the polio vaccines or you get some other vaccines from your in childhood, and for your whole life, you are protected. So it's a one-time business. Nowadays, due to the coronavirus, COVID-19, we have the number of vaccines have been developed in the last 1 year, and they are giving the vaccination to everybody. So what it will provide? It will provide a protection. Question is how it provides a protection. You give once and then it is protected for a long time. Because human body itself has a fighting system that is called immune system. Any disease, any pathogens, they know how to fight. Only problem is time. If immune system is slow, in fighting against the pathogens, then pathogen will dominate and then they will kill you. Okay. Only thing you have to train the system in advance, train your immune system in advance to give that, let's say, virus or pathogen is look like that and give to your body. Body will prepare the defense against it. And once it will prepare the defense, it will keep that type of antibodies or B cells so that they can fight in future also. Actually. That is called memory cells. Actually. Memory T cells, memory B cells, they maintain it. So in future, when you will be infected by same pathogen, they know it, how to handle this particular type of pathogen actually. And then immune system will react very fast and then they will remove from your body. Actually. So that's a basically advantage. Okay. Now, you know the concept of vaccine. The next question is how to develop the vaccines. Actually. So history of immunization is long, and we know from the long time the smallpox is a major part of the problem actually. And earlier there was no vaccine. But what they observed that once you are infected from the smallpox, and if you survive, then whole life you will not be reinfected again. That is a property. And same on the same principles, they realize that how to treat a person. Actually. So they take cowpox, and then they kill it and they give to the human basically, and that's why the vaccinations come into the existence against the different pathogens. So vaccination or immunization concept come into the picture. The question is basically how to develop vaccines, and one thing I would like to state here. It is a vaccine due to which lot of living lives have been saved over the years. Think about if there is no vaccine till today for anything, then we have a lot of people have died actually. So vaccine is a very important factor in the human beings' life. Okay. Now question is the type of vaccines. Type of vaccines we can divide into the major three categories actually. That is called whole organ based pathogens, means take the pathogen and kill it and give to the body. But sometimes the major problem with this technology is that you are giving a lot of toxic material and same time it is possible the pathogen may revive actually. Okay, it is not fully attenuated or fully killed, then it may come up back actually. That's one problem, and a lot of toxicity is there. Well, let's say for example, tuberculosis is a good example, which have around 4,000 protein, around 4,000 genes. So genome is around 4.5 MB or something like that. Okay. So now lot of unnecessary material is given. So people thought why we are giving too much actually. Can we take only single protein which can generate the immunity or which can generate the memory B cells? So that's basically called recombinant based vaccines or based on the single protein based vaccines. The further minimization is going on, that is called epitope based vaccine or subunit vaccine. So, but in that case, we have to understand the region of the protein which can activate the memory cells actually. So, limitations, there is a lot of limitations of present methods for the subunit vaccine. So, we have to work on it. That's where the challenge is there. So, before we go into the bioinformatics, how the bioinformatics can be applied, we have to understand the concept. Let's say this is a concept, just a big concept. For any pathogen, these are the, let's say, pathogens, virus, fungal. So first layer of defense, we have the skin. If they cross it, then there is a innate immune system. Firstly, biochemical barriers is there, which will kill some of them. Still some will cross. Then the innate immune system is there. Innate immune system is very important to recognize the pathogen. Once innate immune system recognize the pathogen, it provides the first line of defense as well as give the signal to the adaptive immune system. The innate immune system, the disadvantage is that it's not specific to any pathogen. It doesn't recognize the size or shape of the pathogen. It simply recognizes that some pathogen is there, or it start to give some release of chemicals so that it can provide some defense to the system. But major part of defense system is adaptive immune system, adaptive immune response. That's mainly consists of the B cell, T cell, and they recognize size and shape of the pathogen, and based on that, they generate the memory B cells, memory cells to fight, to keep in the memory that how to fight this pathogen. Or I will say in a simple term actually. Just think about it. As a human, you have around 10 to the power 13 type of B cells. But each type of B cells population is limited because you cannot keep the all type of cells in bulk. And each cell have the one receptor. Receptor is nothing, it's basically antibody. So each antibody is different. So it means you have 10 to the power 13 type of antibodies. So each cell have one type of antibody. Now, once you got the infected from some virus or bacteria, what will happen? It will recognize the size and shape of the virus by the particular type of cell actually. Okay, so if once it recognizes it, it will release the antibodies as well as it will generate memory cells. Means it will generate more cells which produce same type of antibody which will kill this virus. So the number of memory cells will increase, and mature B cell have the different lifespan. Even some memory cell, they may be for your whole life actually. So they may protect you for the whole life actually. So that's a concept. So you are increasing number of B cells which can recognize the particular type of pathogens. That's the concept. Anyway, so this is the same thing, whole organism to individual antigen or protein to a small region in the protein that is called epitope or antigens, antigenic region. So I told you in beginning that I am not a biologist at all. So for learning for myself, whenever I work in any field of the biology, first I make the slide for myself actually to understand what a system is. So for me, this system is, let's say we have the word of disease causing agents, or you simply call pathogens basically, right? These pathogens cause the disease. And now there is a two type of defense, non-specific defense that is called by the toll-like receptors or PRRPs, pattern recognition receptors. They recognize the different molecules. Then there is a specific type defense, and that consists of the humoral immunity and cell-mediated immunity. In case of the humoral immunity, they have the B cell concept. In case of the cellular immunity, that's the concept of the T cells, basically T helper cell and cytotoxic T cells. So now the question is, as a bioinformatician, to identify, to predict the small peptide which can activate our B cells, or which is called B cell epitope, or which can be activate our T cells, cytotoxic T cell that is called CTL epitopes, or helper cells that is called T helper epitopes. So that's where the challenge is. So this is just the example. There is one situation where your pathogen or disease causing agent is inside your cell. So when it is inside the cell, it will secrete some proteins. That's a natural phenomenon of any pathogen. So once it releases some proteins, then our system will recognize it. Proteosomes will recognize it that this is a foreign protein. They will chop it. Then you need a software. We have developed some software called p-cleavage here, which will chop the protein and it will put in the pieces. Some of the pieces, which is called peptide actually. Your peptide and protein, you have to understand. If it is a size more than 50 amino acids, we call protein. If it is less than that, we call peptide. So it's the same thing. So if you protein, if you cut into the pieces, then it becomes the peptides basically. So some of the peptide will go to the ER system. But going to ER system, they have to bind with the TAC, transport accelerated proteins. They have to bind with it, and we need again the software. So there is a software developed by our group as well as by other groups, and these will bind to the MSC class 1 molecules. Once they are bound to MSC class 1 molecules, the MSC class 1 molecule will take them to the cell surface. So here it will be a antigen here. So antigen here is from this peptide from the protein. So it will present it on the cell surface just to show that this cell I am infected. That signal is that I am infected, already infected by some pathogen is inside. So what will happen? There is a CD8 cell or cytotoxic T cells which are basically doing the monitoring, and they recognize it, MSC class 1 molecule with peptide, and they will release some cytokines which will lyse this cell. So that whole cell will lyse, so the infected cell will be killed this way. But we need the software for each step basically. So these are the name of the softwares for different purpose. I'm not going into the detail because it will take long time. Same way, there is another possibility that your pathogen, disease causing agent outside and releasing some proteins. So these proteins will be taken inside, and that it will go to the lysosome. And lysosome will be again break them into the pieces. Please remember, in this process, earlier it was MSC class 1, here MSC class 2 will bind with these peptides and take to the cell surface like earlier. So here, this molecule is MSC class 2, where in the previous molecule it was MSC class 1. Am I right? So it's a MSC class 2. And once it is a MSC class 2 with the peptide, here CD8 cell will not come. There will be a cell called CD4 cell, or simple word we call T helper cells. They will recognize it, they will release certain cytokines and will activate the whole immune system basically. So helper cell role is to activate the immune system, or particularly activating the B cells and cytotoxic B cells. Okay. So again, we need the software to understand that how it will bind and how it will recognize. So this is a database we developed long time back when we are to work on the B cell actually. So because if you, that's what we did the different than the most of us actually, most of the Indian researchers. If you see carefully, most of the databases have been developed in abroad, NCBI, EBI, and other things. Okay, so the advantage the person who developed the database, they have the depth knowledge as well as data is available to them first actually, then to anybody else actually. So we also developed the database here, and this database have been used to first benchmark the existing methods, and we realized that whatever the existing methods at that time in 2003, their performance was not more than 57% actually. Okay, so that's a poor performance. Even if you combine all the physiochemical parameters, it's maximum 58% actually. So the question is basically how to improve, because all the methods were based on the physiochemical properties, and the physiochemical properties have the limitations. So the major challenge was how to apply ANN, artificial neural network, or machine learning techniques in the field of B cell approach, because challenge was machine learning technique needs a fixed length of the vector or fixed length of the protein, where peptide which recognized by B cell have other variable levels from 6 amino to 60 amino. So how do you implement it? Nobody was able to implement till 2006. So first time we implemented by making some assumptions and converting the peptide into the features, numerical features, and apply the machine learning technique. And in this process, we are able to develop this software. And this software is heavily used by the community. Nearly 1,000 citations have been come for this paper, and it's still heavily used actually. In last 1.5 years, it is used more than 300 citations actually. Why? Because a lot of people in the coronavirus using this server to predict the B cell approach. The next question is, after the adaptive immune system, innate immune system you cannot ignore. Innate immune system is very important, where it's a pattern recognized receptors which recognize any signals. In fact, all the vaccine, all the adjuvants in the drugs or vaccines, they are based on the activation of the toll-like receptors or pattern recognition. So we create this database. So we have the advantage over the time. We created novel databases which was not there at all in the literature or available. So we start the new fields because once you have the database, then you create the data sets, and these data sets can be used to develop the different prediction methods. So we develop three type of methods for predicting the vaccine adjuvants. One is based on the DNA, and DNA-based adjuvants is nowadays used in the coronavirus vaccines actually, and RNA-based vaccine adjuvants and peptide-based vaccine adjuvants. So these are the different type of, and that's are based on the toll-like receptors. What type of molecules we recognize? Based on that, we design the different type of adjuvants. Most of the adjuvants in the market, they are basically based on the alum actually. Okay, and that's basically chemical, and the chemical have some disadvantage. So we are working on the biomolecule-based vaccine adjuvants because biomolecule belongs to the body, so their degradation will be there, so toxicity will be less. Actually. Same way we have the method for predicting the allergy because that's an important part. Even if you're designing the vaccine, it may be allergic actually. Even in the GMO actually, genetically modified food, the chances is there the proteins produced by the GMO may be toxic, may be allergic. So we have developed a method which can predict the allergens. Anyway, so these are the tools developed from our group. They are basically designing the different type of vaccines, particularly epitope-based vaccines. You can use them whenever you have the time because I believe that a lot of students are there. So using these tools are not difficult. They are basically user-friendly. Just put the peptide or protein sequencing. They will do the prediction. So this is a software recent review by our group. If you are interested, you can read this review. It will provide a complete information about the in silico tools, which is useful for the designing the subunit vaccines. This is an interesting question actually. Sometimes we read a lot, but we don't know the general information. I asked a number of students actually during the interview, what is the size of the genome of the coronavirus? Most of them, they have no idea. So it is important to understand that what is the size of different viruses actually. Size means genome size, means how many kb are there. Let's say, for example, coronavirus, the size of the present coronavirus, which is there in the market, it's basically around 30 K, means 30,000 nucleotides are there actually. And it's a very big size actually. If you see comparing to the Zika virus or Ebola virus, they are around something 10K or something like that. So this is much large in the size actually. And there is these viruses can be divided into the RNA based and DNA based. Coronavirus is RNA based. So these are the different size. So it's important sometimes just have a look. So some numerical numbers give you the idea. Even some kid want to ask you that you are a biologist, can you tell me the genome size of this particular genome of coronavirus? Then you don't know what is there actually. Though you have done already MSc, BSc or whatever the degrees you have. So sometimes I feel the lack of curiosity is there actually. We need to have the curiosity if you want to do something in the life. Anyway, I'm not going into the detail. This is just example of the history of viral vaccine in the market for over the years. You can see that a lot of vaccines have been developed. They save a lot of lives basically. This is very interesting work we have done. I will tell you very interesting. The previous speaker, Sudhir Gupta, and me, we are opposite to each other. His whole life he works on the mega softwares, evolutionary history, and on based on the whole one software or based on the single software, he done a great job. Actually. In my case, I never focus on anything actually. I have the curiosity in my mind and I want to learn the new things actually. And I have developed many softwares in the different fields actually. I work in the drug discovery, vaccine discovery, pharma, so wide range of field because I work for my curiosity actually. So this is another interesting work from my group. So where we identify lot of cancers are due to the viruses basically. Can we develop the vaccines or can we suggest the vaccine candidate for these cancers actually against the virus? If you treat the virus, the cancer will be automatically treated. So this is an interesting site. Whenever you have the time, you can just have a look. Few years back, there is a Ebola. Like nowadays we have the corona, earlier we have the Ebola actually, though it was not spread as much as the COVID. So question is basically, as a scientist, the responsibility is how can I help the public? Because I am the part of the public actually. So how can I help the public? Of course, I don't have the experimental lab. I cannot design the vaccines or maybe diagnostic test, but I have the one power. We have the one power, that's computation power. So we developed the website, and on website we have put the different information. What are the different genome species of the Ebola? What are the different RNA? With complete information, as well as predicted vaccine candidate, predicted siRNA-based therapeutics. So all these are freely available. Anybody is interested who's working in the biology, they can use it. And rather than trying the hit and trial, they can use the predicted candidate to develop the vaccines or therapy against the Ebola. So this information has been published long time back. After that, there was a Zika virus. So we did the same thing. We do a lot of analysis, predicting the vaccine tools, predicting the siRNA-based therapy, phylogenetic, whatever the information, theoretical information possible, we did it, and the site is available. So the advantage is here, our website is available, you can search anytime. Now, if you go to the traditional vaccine, we know it, what is a traditional vaccines. That simply take the wild virus, then you attenuate it so that it becomes non-functional, and once it non-functional, then you give to the body so that it look like that actual virus is there, but it is not actual virus, it's basically attenuated. So Bharat Biotech is on that principle. Then there is a different type of vaccines basically. I will not go in the detail because I have to maintain the time. One is called subunit vaccines. They have some advantage, and these are the vaccines which are in the market actually. And this is an example of existing based on the subunit vaccine. Then inactivated vaccines, live attenuated vaccines. So these are the different type of vaccines developed against the different type of viruses, and these are the basically under trials or approved vaccines against the coronavirus. Why there is a fast discovery is possible of the vaccine against the coronavirus? Because we are able to sequence it in the quick time basically. So we are able to sequence it. We know that what is a structure, what is a sequence, and everything actually about it actually. So there is a different type of vaccines. One is called DNA vaccines, where the particular protein, because most of the vaccine development in case of coronavirus is around this one. That is called spike proteins. So most of the work is around this. In some cases, the DNA, which can code for the spike protein, have been put into the form of in the DNA. In some cases, in the form of RNA. Some for let's say, for example, in Covishield, that we have the adenovirus. Inside the adenovirus, they have put the RNA, which is corresponding to this one, spike proteins, and then it will do the replication. So this is the principle of the. Again, I am talking about the principle of the this Covaxin. That they have taken this coronavirus, then they inactivate it, and then they give to the body. The body thought that enemy is there. Then there is a generation of B cells, T cells, and immune system will be activated. Memory cell will be generated. So when next time when infection will be there, then we have a system to fight that. Please remember one thing. If you have already got infected, in certain extent, you are also got vaccinated, at least defense for some time. So that's the advantage. And this is the example of the Covishield vaccine. In Covishield vaccines, what they take as a spike protein of the coronavirus. Corresponding to that, they have put the DNA which can code for the spike proteins, and then it will go inside, and once it goes here, then it will produce the RNA, and this RNA will be basically will produce the spike proteins, and where the defense will be there against the spike proteins. So ultimate goal here is to generate the immunity against the spike protein. Spike protein is important because this virus, coronavirus, is surrounded by the spike proteins. So if antibodies bind to the spike proteins, then they will neutralize the coronavirus. There is a lot of questions there in the public that there is something wrong because vaccines have been developed in 1.5 years, where if you see the history of the vaccines, they take 10 to 15 years basically. That's a normal. Why it is happen actually? Earlier, there is everything is in the serial mode actually. Means one step first completed, then second step, then third step, and like that. Here, they have taken the overlapping steps basically. They have taken the risk. Even the this Covishield vaccines dose was ready before it cleared from the clinical trials. So they start the production even during the clinical trials actually, because they take the risk. They know it. The time is most important. That's why everywhere there is a time overlappings are there. The different process we have run in the parallel actually. That's why we are reached in 10 months to 1.5 years the number of vaccines. But nothing is wrong. That's what I want to say about it. The different vaccines are there. This is our site. So last year February, when this vaccine, this corona started, first thing we did it, we just collect and compile all the information, because we believe first thing in any work is knowledge. So if you have the complete knowledge, what are the basic genomes, what are the different type of diagnostics, what are the immunotherapy or vaccine candidate, what are the drug candidates, then you can start your work easily. So we simply collect, compile the information and provide from one website. So this website is available. You can go here and then you can use this website. So this is a type of information we provide. I'm not going into detail. So thank you very much. I think I am on the time. And if you can't remember even my website address, just put on the Raghav, Google Raghav GPS, and then you will get the information about my websites as well as about my web page. So a lot of information is there. Okay, I'm back.
Thank you, Professor Raghava, for such a nice talk. And we have received several questions from the participants. Would you like to address to some of them, sir?
Yeah, no problem.
So there are several questions regarding COVID as well, along with one question that how this bioinformatics studies can be useful for future job perspectives.
Nowadays, even for doing biology, bioinformatics is important. So there is a lot of job prospects. I will tell you one example actually. From my group, at least 40 students already completed around PhD with my group. All are on the top jobs. Okay. As well as number of students have been trained they are doing a good job. So job prospects is not a problem in bioinformatics. The major problem why people are complaining about the job in bioinformatics, they have very limited knowledge. That's where the whole problem is started. Because we started number of colleges, number of organizations where expertise are not there, experts are not there, and we thought that sub-standard student will work there. That will not work. So my question is other way around. There is a lot of job, lot of opportunities are there. Only thing you should have the knowledge of bioinformatics. So bioinformatics job is not a problem. Job is not a problem in bioinformatics.
Yes, sir. So, sir, can there be an undergraduate course based on bioinformatics knowledge?
Yeah, there are a number of, you are asking for at IIIT.
No, in general, can there be bioinformatics based undergraduate courses?
Yeah, is there. Even we also have. We have started one course here at, called BTech course. That is called CSB, Computer Science and Bioscience. Computer Science and Bioscience. It means what? 2 years we teach the rigor computer science as well as basic biology. And next 2 years we teach the computer science application in the field of biological science actually. So that we are making the student knowledgeable in the both computer science, hardcore computer science, as well as the hardcore biological science, so that they can contribute to the community. The major problem is there. We name of the bioinformatics. Normally, we are just telling the small things actually. How to run the blast, how to run the FASTA, how to use the software. You are not bioinformaticians if you are using the software. Okay, if you are biologist, you are using the software, it's fine. But if anybody think by using the software become the bioinformatician, no, it's not. You have to develop some algorithm, database, software, so that should be there. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, sir, there is a sci-fi question. I'm not sure if you would like to address. Is it possible to inculcate human emotions through artificial intelligence?
Okay, first thing we have to understand that what is a computer? Computer is basically a hardware where we give the instruction to work. So it depends upon us what type of software we can develop actually. Okay, so developing fully human being is difficult because human being itself is writing the software. So it's a basically machine who's executing the different codes actually. So it's not cannot be complete with the human being.
Yes. Now there are several questions from COVID cases, so I would like to ask few of them. A patient can be reinfected coronavirus after a short period of time. So how does a vaccine work in this case?
Maybe it's due to some immune system problems as well. Some people have the immune system, it's not generating the memories. That's why they are infected again actually. And by time. Because everybody immune system is not so strong.
Okay, and in case of coronavirus, there is a time gap that is invariable between both the shots. So how does this change in time gap affects the efficiency of vaccine?
Okay, so I will tell you, the second dose is nothing, it's a basically booster. First dose you are giving, it will take some time, and then there will be development of the antibodies, immune system will be developed. Why you are giving the second dose? You are boosting the immune system. You are further giving the immune system. So that's a boosting case. So if you give 2 doses too early actually, let's say after 1 or 2 weeks, what will happen? That even the first dose is not fully utilized for the immunization, and you have given the second dose actually. So time gap should be there.
Can we develop models of vaccines and artificially test their efficacy? If so, what computer language is best suited for us to learn, Python or something else?
Yeah, that's why the people are working actually. Let's say in case of vaccine design also, nowadays a lot of simulations are there. They are checking which amino acid is responsible for the, let's say, toxicity. okay, or some other side effects. So they are basically checking it in the computers first, and then they are mutating it, then whether the toxicity will be removed or not. And once in the computer it is perfect, then they are going into the in vitro model. If it's successful in the in vitro model, then we go to the in vivo model, basically, animal model. That's a plan, basically.
Okay, sir. So why Covaxin is said to be more effective on Delta variant than Covishield?
Because most of the vaccines, they are based on the spike proteins. If there is too much variation in the spike proteins, okay, so the other vaccine may fail. I'm not saying they will fail. They may fail. But in case of the coronavirus, this Covaxin, they are giving the whole organism, basically. So maybe it's not antibody is not working against only spike protein, but may work against the other proteins, basically. That's why the advantage is there in the traditional vaccines, because they are much more in there. There is a different type of antibody generated.
And I think this can be the last question. What are the limitations of using artificial intelligence in field of bioinformatics?
Look, one thing we have to understand, a very important part, because there's a debate. Even somebody asked me the question, why your tools are not 100% correct? Means why there is error is there? Why prediction doesn't work 100%? I told them, junk in, junk out. So the problem here is the data we are getting, that's not as a perfect. Sometimes same region peptide is shown as a B cell epitope, other time it's showing non-B cell epitope. So if you give the confusion data or junk data, then artificial intelligence cannot do anything, because any AI or any work, data mining work, is knowledge-based work. So based on the knowledge, we are predicting for the future. If this data or this information is not perfect, then we cannot do the perfect prediction actually. That's the limitation. So we need the neat and clean data, which is perfect.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your valuable time to our workshop. Hope students have got really good information and encourage for their future career endeavor. Now I would request Dr. Ruchi V for the vote of thanks. Thank you, Professor Raghu.
Okay.
On behalf of organizing committee, I would like to propose vote of thanks. I would like to thank our keynote speaker, Professor Raghava, for sparing his valuable time and honoring us with his presence. I would also like to thank Principal Sir for his constant support. Professor Raghava sir, I am thankful to you for enlightening our students with your talk, which provided them insight about very interesting topic, that is application of artificial intelligence in drug designing, which is particularly very relevant in today's time. Sir, I am also thankful for you to you for motivating our students to pursue the subject as career, and also some terms that are explained by you in this talk are there in our bioinformatics undergraduate syllabus, which will help them to understand the terms even better. I am grateful to webinar committee and its convener, Dr. G.S. Tuteja, for his constant support. Especially I'm indebted to Dr. Dheeraj for all the technical support that he has provided us in organization of this workshop. Also, I would like to thank my colleagues from Department of Botany for their invaluable support in organization of this workshop. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants and faculty members and guests from other colleges that have joined this workshop through YouTube link. Thank you, sir. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Now I would like to call Dr. Zishan for instructing participants for hands-on session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, last but not the least, this is for our students who are participating. Hope my screen is visible. Please confirm, Ruchi ma'am.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I would like to say, education is not the learning of fact, but the training of minds to think, which is said by Albert Einstein. And this workshop really means it. And as you know, for example, the real understanding of the description of riding a bicycle, bike, or car makes sense after its real use. You cannot have experience of such things when you do not use them. Only its description through literature will not make you able to understand its real value. Similarly, the use of social networking sites also has the similar values, and you are really, really busy. I hope it's keeping you busy all the time, right? Nah. Oh yeah. So now what is important that this recent pandemic situation has widened up the scope of training and learning at global platform using internet resources, and that we are dealing with. We also have taken this opportunity, the college of Zakir Hussain Delhi College, to organize this workshop for undergraduate students to have a basic training in bioinformatics. And as you have already received some instruction for the participation in this workshop, I would like to highlight some important points so that you do not miss this opportunity any further. So as you know, all the sessions will take place on Microsoft Teams. And you have already logged into Microsoft Teams, and there will be